Well, the Fed is obviously independent. It's supposed to be independent, but independence in Trump's head does not exist. He does not understand why a federal government must be independent from himself. He believes that his power and the executive branch's power should dictate what happens with the Fed and with the Department of Justice and with our military, with all of the various things that should be independent. The reality is, as you talk about, Trump being spooked, it's a little late for Trump to be spooked at this point. We've been talking about tariffs. He has been talking about this for quite some time. The markets are in disarray. We're heading toward a recession. Everybody is saying that this is a terrible thing. And yet for just now, all of a sudden, he woke up and he realized, this is a terrible thing for our economy and our country.
I just have to respond to your assertion that the federal government should operate independently of the elected president of the United States. You mentioned the Fed.
The Department of Justice.
You said DOJ, which is obviously appointed and works for the president.
No, but it's independent. Your laws should not be enforced based on the president. They should be enforced based on the law.
You said the military. Obviously, he's the commander-in-chief of the military. I'm just trying to figure out what percentage or part of the government that you think should run away from the president.
There are institutions that are independent.
I'm going to step in here because I don't want us to change the subject, okay? We are talking about the independence of the Fed. Do you agree or disagree that the Fed should be independent?
I think the president should be able to render an opinion about
that is a
monetary
yes
policy.
Or no.
Whether he should be able to fire him is an open question.
That is a yes or no question. Should the Fed be independent of the whims of any president of the United States?
I think the president ought to be able to have opinions.
Why can't you say yes or no?
Previous presidents.
I think it's an open question where they should be able to fire the head of the Fed. Some Republican senators don't agree.
So, Scott.
But I don't. Right. I just think the idea that the president should not have any opinion about monetary policy is crazy.
I'm going to give you a third try on this one. Should the Fed's decisions about how they operate, the interest rates, when they raise or lower them, should they be independent of the president of the United States?
Does independent mean they don't take his opinion into consideration?
Independent means no, they don't take his opinion into consideration.
I don't agree with that. I'm sorry. I think the president.
Okay.
I think the president should be able to render an opinion. I'm going to ask
Charlotte, what do you this was taken in by the markets, that idea, right, this week. What was the reaction among people who are making money, they have businesses, they are operating in the financial world to this idea that people like Scott believe that the Fed should be listening to the president and act accordingly?
That's not what I said. You put words in my mouth. I said, should he be able to render an opinion, and should the Fed take that into consideration?
No.
I think he should be able to have an opinion. I didn't say anything. And they should take that into consideration. It shouldn't be the only thing.
I didn't say
anything. Have an opinion.
The president can have whatever opinions he wants. Yeah. What I'm asking is whether the Fed should be independent in their decision-making from those opinions.
And I said, does that mean they can take his opinion into consideration? And I think they should take the president's opinion into consideration. That's not the only thing.
Let me see if Charlotte has some thoughts on this.
I think it's very clear from the market's response that not just the desired outcome, the fundamental law of nature needs to be that the Federal Reserve, the chair of the Federal Reserve, makes decisions on monetary policy that are based on economic data, not on the whims of a president. And that's very, very clear. And I think, the job of the Fed is complex, particularly in the environment in which Trump has placed Jerome Powell, where you have a threat of slowing growth and increasing inflation due to these tariffs, right? So you have a stagflationary environment that's very hard for the Fed to manage. It is true that some investors probably, if Jerome Powell were to lower interest rates, I'm not going to predict how the market would respond. However, it's very, very clear that the market responds extremely negatively to even a hint that the president might intervene.
There's a direct. Good morning. Happy Wednesday. Hopefully you guys are having a phenomenal morning. It's only about 9 o'clock here in Chicago, but hopefully you guys are having a great morning. I am so excited to talk about this episode of Abby Phillips tonight, and I'm going to tell you guys why. I like Abby a lot. Abby seems like she's a very nice person, but Abby allows her panelists to go. She allows them to talk, and most times talk over each other. Scott Jennings is not always, but he's on her panel a lot. Scott does not have a lot of respect for Abby. I can tell. even when Abby is like, okay, hold up, we have to talk one at a time, Scott continues to talk over her. And a lot of what Scott does, he changed the subject. And this is what he do. This is how he debate. And this is the reason that I've said so many times, he debate in a very intellectually dishonest way, because this is how he debates. If someone says Donald Trump is having he's doing political overreach, he's trying to tell the legislative branch or the judicial branch, Congress, whomever, he's trying to tell them what to do or how to operate. Scott will say something like this: so we're not going to allow the president to be the president. And it's like, who said that? He argues in a very disingenuous way. And I'm going to tell you guys something. I did a video about Scott, and I had so many people that was like, Scott is the best thing that happens to CNN. And I'm like, I'm scared that it's people in this country that thinks that's being great. Talking over people, changing the subject, being disingenuous with your argument. I'm just like, are you guys not seeing what it is? Now, if you're just in your camp and you're just a person that's right-wing or conservative and that's the way you lean and you want to take up for Scott, God bless your testimony. But anybody who is kind of like middle of the road, or somebody that's kind of calling it straight, is not going to say that Scott is a great debater, because what he do is take what you say and change it and flip it to make it something so ridiculous. And it's like, that's not even what I said. Like, what are you even talking about? You're trying to win an argument instead of trying to educate America. And that makes you disingenuous. And to me, that makes you ineffective. So here's what Abby did. And I was so happy that she finally did it. She didn't allow Scott to change the subject. She didn't allow him to obfuscate and say things that she didn't say. She kept bringing it to him and basically saying, so Scott, are you saying that Donald Trump has a right to tell the Fed chair what to do regarding the federal government, the feds and the interest rates and the economic whatever? Are you saying that Donald Trump has a right to do that? Scott kept trying to change the subject. He kept trying to include other things, because that's how he debates. He can't just come out and say, no, that's not okay. That's not what we do in this country, because he knows that the Republican Party, conservatives, people in Republican leadership, they're not going to like that. So he's not going to come out and say that. But what he'll try to do is attack the other person and act like they're asking him something way different than what they ask. And it's like, sweetheart, I'm phenomenal at debating. I don't like to do it because I get mad for real. But I can argue with a wall. So it's like, you're not going to get over on me by just like rambling or whatever, because we could just ramble all together. And so when Abby finally, because like I said, Abby is a very nice person. You can tell she's very mild-mannered. She's very respectful. But I tell you what, if it was somebody like me that was hosting that show, it would be a very different show, because no way are you guys going to continuously overtalk the host while she's telling you, okay, wait a minute, we have to calm down. We only can speak at once. And you're going to continue to talk over me on my show. No, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. And so I'm going to tell you something that should be alarming to everybody. I don't care what side you're on. Republican pundits, Republicans in Congress, they are okay with Donald Trump being a dictator. They're okay with it, or they're afraid of him and they're not going to stop it. Because the fact that Scott Jennings couldn't say concretely that Donald Trump has no right to tell the Fed chair what to do as regarding interest rates and anything economic, the fact that he just couldn't say that is disturbing. It is disturbing. Yes, Donald Trump is the president of the United States, but that does not mean he gets to tell people, everybody, the Fed chair, what to do regarding interest rates. How is that a difficult thing to say? You should be able to just say, no, that's not his job. And then Sir Michael, my God. I was like, Sir Michael kept saying, well, he tried to make a point about Donald Trump having an opinion, or this not other presidents had an opinion. And it's like, This shit is cultism. I don't care what anybody say. The fact that they can't just concretely say that it's political overreach. Our president, they can say, I am a Republican, I'm a conservative, I support this president, but that's not the way it works here in the United States of America. And the fact that they cannot say that should scare everybody. Because that is a very... When you guys, I'm going to put the clip in the beginning of the video. So normally I'll chop the clips up and put it throughout the video. I'm going to put the clip at the beginning of the video because it's shocking. It's shocking that these people cannot just say, yeah, no, our president shouldn't do that. I support him. I support his policies. I believe in his ideologies, but he should not do that. They won't say it because they're afraid. They are afraid. They're afraid of retribution. They're afraid of being ostracized. They are afraid of Donald Trump. And that's sad. And that's not how Republicans live. Like, if everybody start being afraid and everybody deciding, okay, I'm scared that somebody's going to come after me or I'm going to be ostracized, we're not going to have a country. We're not going to have a country. We all need to be able to use our voices. We all need to be able to articulate our ideologies and our messages without being afraid that somebody's going to come after us. Scott sat on that show and basically agreed. Like, he was, first, you can tell his answer by his non-answer. So the fact that when Abby said it for the third time, when she asked him the question, is it okay for Donald Trump to tell the Fed chair what to do regarding interest rates and like economic dealings? And he was like, so the president can't have an opinion? Scott, who you think you playing with? Who you think you playing with? If you can tell, Abby was just like, you can tell Abby's a really nice, she's a much nicer person than I am. To tell you the truth and shame the devil, she's a much nicer person than I am. Because I would have been like, if you don't answer the question, you're not welcome back on my show. And if CNN has an issue with it, we can have a conversation regarding that because you're not answering the question, because you're afraid to answer the question. So what you want to do is attack other people because you don't want to answer the question. And then here comes Shirt Michael trying to call himself helping Scott, but he makes it worse because he cites a point. And Abby, like, he cites a point and basically say another president had those same feelings. And then Abby was like, okay, so what happened? What happened? And apparently something bad happened because Sher Michael didn't want to finish the history lesson that he was trying to give all of us. So if you're going to give people a history lesson, baby, give us the complete history lesson. But you're not going to give us the complete history lesson because the complete history lesson doesn't support your argument. I was watching today and I was just like, this is sad. It's sad because we don't live in Russia. We don't live in China. We don't live in a country that you can't voice your opinion. Like, that's the First Amendment. That's our First Amendment. Freedom of speech, freedom of being able to articulate and say what you really mean. And if we lose that, then what are we? What is this country if we lose our First Amendment? The first right that we have. And Sher Michael and Scott looked crazy because there's a way if you debate, like, even if you're going to be a coward, right? Let's call it what it is. They're scared. They're being cowards. Even if you're going to be a coward, there is a way to still articulate your point. You can say, I am a conservative. I am a Republican. I support Donald Trump. However, this is not what the president should spend his time doing. They won't even say that because they are afraid. And that's sad. And that should be alarming to every American. I didn't even want to talk about the content or what they were actually talking about because we all know what it is. We all know what the right answer is, even if they didn't want to say it. I wanted to talk about in this video the fact that we have people in the Republican Party that's obviously afraid to give their real opinions because they're afraid of what is going to happen to them. This is happening in real time. This is alarming. This is something everybody should be like, okay, you can't even, because you know how I'm pretty sure dictatorship starts and authoritarianism and all of that stuff start by people being afraid to speak out, by people being afraid to use their voice. That's how it starts. And Scott Jennings and Sherry Michael was shameful. It was shameful because they know better. They know better. And if it was a Democratic president, oh my God. I promise you, if a Democratic president was doing the stuff that Donald Trump was doing, baby, Scott Jennings' head will pop off his shoulders and roll down the street. But because it's Donald Trump, and because Trump, he sides with Trump's political ideologies, he's going to make every excuse in the book for him. And that is how dictatorship starts. That is my commentary. I'm going to go upstairs and be productive because I keep seeing people walk past my car because I'm sitting in the parking lot of my job. So I'm going to go upstairs and man my black business, like I always say. But y'all look at that clip and tell me what you think. Because for me, I'm like, this is alarming. This is alarming that you have people, pundits, that won't give their opinions, which is what they're paid to do, won't give their opinions because they are afraid of the president of the United States. That is not America. That is not a democracy. That is not a republic. I'll talk to you guys later. You guys have a phenomenal day. Bye.